Israel-Gaza truce, Netanyahu signals, Phase 2 is near, and Zelensky not ready for US peace proposal. Welcome to the Mirror TV. I am Mercy. Please subscribe, share, like, and comment to enable us to keep giving you top stories happening around the world. Crisis in the East Sea, Japan vows resolute response after Chinese radar lock. Diplomatic channels between Tokyo and Beijing are gridlocked following a severe military provocation in the East China Sea. On Sunday, the Japanese Ministry of Defense reported that Chinese J-15 fighter jets had twice locked their fire control radars onto Japanese surveillance aircraft. A fire control lock is considered a hostile act, one step short of firing a missile. The incident occurred amidst a massive surge in Chinese naval activity, with over 100 vessels detected near Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines in recent weeks. Japan summoned China's ambassador to lodge a formal protest. Beijing has denied aggressive intent, claiming Japanese aircraft disrupted naval training exercises. Australia has joined Japan in condemning the act, urging immediate de-escalation to prevent an accidental war in the Pacific. Benin coup attempt. Foiled. Nigeria deploys jets to stabilize region. Democracy in West Africa faced another test today as the government of Benin announced it had thwarted a coup attempt. Heavy gunfire was heard near the presidential palace in Cotonou early Monday morning. However, by midday, the government announced that loyalist forces, significantly bolstered by a rapid deployment of Nigerian troops and air support, had secured the capital. Nigeria's decisive intervention marks a shift in regional security policy, signaling a zero-tolerance approach to coups after a string of government topples in the Sahel. Witnesses reported seeing mutinous soldiers abandoning their posts and fleeing toward the border. Checkpoints have been established across the capital as the manhunt for the coup leaders begins. Putin and Modi hold high-stakes summit in New Delhi. Russian President Vladimir Putin was received with full state honors in New Delhi, a move that has drawn sharp criticism from Washington and Brussels. The summit focused heavily on energy security, with Russia pledging uninterrupted fuel shipments to power India's growing economy. Notably absent were high-profile arms deals, suggesting India is cautiously diversifying its military hardware away from Russian dependency due to supply chain issues caused by the Ukraine war. Nevertheless, the leaders announced an expansion of trade ties, cementing India's role as a critical economic lifeline for Moscow amidst unprecedented global sanctions. Trump-Zelensky not ready for US peace proposal. Hopes for a swift end to the Russia-Ukraine war dimmed this week as Donald Trump publicly criticized President Zelensky for rejecting a US-drafted peace framework. Speaking after talks in Miami ended without a breakthrough, Trump stated that the Ukrainian leadership isn't ready to accept the reality on the ground. The proposal reportedly involved freezing the current front lines, a condition Kyiv views as a capitulation to Russian aggression. Simultaneously, US envoys in Moscow met with Russian officials but found little room for compromise, with the Kremlin hailing Trump's security strategy but offering no withdrawal of troops. Massive Russian drone strike devastates Ukraine rail hub. In a brutal demonstration of force, Russia launched one of its largest aerial attacks of the year, targeting Ukraine's railway network. The strike hit a vital hub outside Kyiv, destroying tracks and rolling stock used to transport grain and military aid. Emergency services have been working through the night to extinguish fires. The attack underscores the disconnect between the diplomatic maneuvering in Western capitals and the brutal reality of the war, where infrastructure remains a primary target for Russian destruction. Sudan massacre, drone strike kills 50 children. The hidden tragedy of the Sudan civil war resurfaced with shocking brutality today. A doctors' group in Kordofan reported that a drone strike attributed to paramilitary forces hit a crowded market area, killing 50 people. 33 of the victims were children. The attack highlights the indiscriminate nature of the violence in Sudan, where international attention has waned. Aid organizations are calling for immediate humanitarian corridors, warning that the healthcare system in the region has completely collapsed. Israel-Gaza truce, Netanyahu signals, Phase 2 is near. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced today that the initial phase of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza is nearing completion. Speaking to the Knesset, he indicated that Phase 2, which involves more permanent governance discussions and further hostage releases, is imminent. However, Qatari mediators have warned that the deal remains fragile. Tensions persist over the presence of Israeli troops in specific corridors, and Turkey has stated that disarming Hamas should not be the immediate priority of any stabilization force, complicating the roadmap to lasting peace. U.S. immigration crackdown, ICE raids and resistance in New Orleans. The battle over U.S. immigration policy has intensified on the streets of major cities. In New Orleans, reports have surfaced of ICE agents using aggressive online monitoring to track and arrest undocumented immigrants. In response, politicians in sanctuary cities are pushing back. Zohran Mamdani held rallies in New York, explicitly instructing immigrant communities on their rights to refuse entry to federal agents lacking warrants. The clash represents a deepening divide between federal enforcement agencies and local municipal leaders protecting immigrant populations. Syria post-Assad leader claims Israel fighting ghosts. Syria marked the first anniversary of the fall of Bashar al-Assad in a state of fragile uncertainty. The country is fractured, with various factions vying for control. Amidst this, Israel has continued airstrikes against suspected Iranian weapon transfers. In a defiant statement, Syria's current leadership mocked the Israeli campaign, suggesting intelligence failures were leading to strikes on empty targets. However, justice for the victims of the previous regime remains elusive, with courts overwhelmed and factional fighting hindering reconstruction. U.S.-Mexico relations. Hegseth defends strikes on cartels. The U.S. has adopted a kinetic approach to the war on drugs. Defense official Pete Hegseth publicly defended the sinking of alleged cartel vessels by U.S. assets, a move that has outraged Mexican sovereignty advocates. While the strikes occurred in international waters, Mexico views this as a dangerous escalation. The policy shift coincides with rising violence in Mexico, including a recent explosion outside a police station in Michoacan that killed 5, as cartels retaliate against increased pressure. Iran expands naval power with new warships. Tehran showcased its growing naval capabilities this week, rolling out a new class of locally manufactured warships. The launch was accompanied by live-fire exercises in the strategic Strait of Hormuz. The display is interpreted as a message to the U.S. and its regional allies that Iran retains the capability to disrupt global oil supplies despite years of economic sanctions. It also coincides with the anniversary of General Soleimani's death, a period typically marked by heightened anti-Western rhetoric. Macron pressures Xi to abandon Putin. Europe is making a renewed diplomatic push to isolate Moscow. French President Emmanuel Macron has called on Xi Jinping to use his leverage to push Russia toward a ceasefire. However, analysts note that China is simultaneously seeking Russian backing for its own territorial ambitions in Asia. The No Limits partnership appears resilient, with Beijing offering platitudes about peace while continuing to supply dual-use technologies to the Russian military. Russia deploys Poseidon nuclear submarine. The threat of nuclear escalation took a silent but deadly form this week as Russia's newest special-purpose submarine began sea trials. The vessel is designed to carry the Poseidon torpedo, an autonomous nuclear-powered drone capable of causing radioactive tsunamis. The deployment is seen as a direct message to NATO. While the weapon's operational readiness is debated, the mere existence of the platform forces the US and its allies to divert massive resources toward underwater detection and anti-submarine warfare. That's all we have for you today.